So welcome to the Herland report, Kristin. You are partly Italian, partly Norwegian. You've lived most of your life in Italy, but you know also the Nordic countries very well. You are an author here and also a journalist originally. And you do retreats for silence, and you teach people how to be present. Tell us, what is the value of silence?
What is the value of silence? Silence is an amazing universe. Actually, silence, when you really start to know the silence within yourself, you are in touch with, I would say, the birthplace of your own soul. It's not a final place in you. It's a starting point where your own soul can start to open and flourish. So, as I see it, the path of the soul, the inner path, is very much about nurturing that quality that we call silence. And silence, in essence, is really a mystery. You know, I think it was an Arabic mystic who said, "He who seeks God will find himself. He who seeks himself will find God." So, in essence, the path is two ways, towards the divine and towards yourself.
And what was it in your life that made you start searching for silence? Or, how did you get into this kind of line of work pertaining to having retreats in Europe and helping people reach a point of silence and calm in their inner life?
I think it was a basic curiosity that I don't know why I have this so strongly, but I feel that the curiosity that made me also become a journalist took me to dive into these topics, existential, philosophical, soulful topics, since I was very young. Not really very, very young, but during my studies in university. So one of the first topics that I was really curious about was death. Mm-hmm. And I was actually curious about my own curiousness, because I was wondering why am I so curious about death and dying? I'm only 25 years old. But later in life, I actually discovered that many people start their own inner search with that specific topic of death. So, in a way, you start with the end, and then when we come closer to the end, we understand why we started with that mystical and strange and curious and undefinable topic that is death.
I'm thinking about Steve Jobs. Of course, he is deceased, but he used to say that every morning he woke up and he looked in the mirror and he said, "That guy is soon gonna be dead," of himself. And in that way, he kind of felt that it created an awareness within him that his lifespan would be short, which goes for all of us, of course. We're all heading towards our grave. And that made him aware of how to live in a certain way so that he would accomplish.
Yes, exactly. So that is training of awareness, So as I see, an inner path is always a refining of your own awareness. So he had an awareness when he looked at himself in the mirror of his life. It's like the old Romans, they said, memento mori. Remember every day that your life span is this. And also another wonderful philosopher that I just love, Seneca. He says that he said at that time, we don't care so much about time, but it's very important, because when we care about time span, then we start to value exactly what we use our time for and how we want to use our life. That every day is actually precious, that every hour is an important hour, and that we can use every day and every hour in a nurturing way to nurture and grow inside, and in many ways. And silence, the dedication that I have towards silence, which has been my path for a long time, gives me that sense of nurturing something indefinable in myself. I know that something is happening and something is growing, even if I cannot always explain what it is and understand in a rational way what it is. But something is happening when I nurture my inner life with silence and contemplation and reflection. Something happens.
I live in the Middle East, and I see there with the Orthodox Church, they are so much into both mysticism and contemplation, and there's so many of the monks of Mount Athos in Greece, and so many books have been written about their wisdom, and they seem to think the same way you do, frankly, and search for that silence, existential silence, really. And when you look at the modern world as well, I mean, we have TV stations, there's sounds everywhere, there's a pressure. Living in cities such as London, Paris, Rome, it's really the hustle and bustle of the large cities is just unbelievable. The pace is so rapid, and then you have the mobile phones and everybody's on the phone all the time, and so many impressions. I'm just thinking there must be such a need in our culture today for the discipline of entering a space of quietness and peace.
Yes, and I think many people really long for this, but they don't really know what they long for. So programs like this, or information or an encounter with another person that can inspire you to look and to confirm that there is a way that you actually can walk. There is a path that you can walk, and that you can easily, it's not so difficult to learn to know yourself and start to become more aware of what is going on inside. It's not dangerous. It's not difficult. It's just you have to move your attention somewhere else and move away from what is so noisy and so difficult often. You have to just do that turn. And sometimes we need some guidance to do that turn, or to inspire us to do that. So I think today there are so many beautiful beings working with and giving inspiration. So people have so many things to choose among, maybe too many. But all of them have that same actual message as the old masters, because the old wisdom, either it comes from one continent or another continent, the essence of the wisdom is the same. Is the same they had in Greece 2,500 years ago. It's the same essence as the mystical traditions bring, But for me, the most important thing is really experimenting yourself, to put yourself into that challenge, trying out yourself. You can listen and be inspired by others, but at the final end, you have to put yourself on track and do the work. You cannot buy the solutions somewhere else. And sometimes to be on a spiritual path or an inner path is challenging, and it can be painful, because sometimes you see things in yourself that you don't like so much. Sometimes you encounter what I call the inner saboteur, because there is a part inside ourselves that do not like this, do not like the wisdom, starts to push against it. So you have different forces. You have to face yourself, in the mirror, good and bad, and accept that you are all of this. And that can be tough on that path. But if your curiosity and your will to know yourself and to really find out who are you? What am I doing here on this planet?
Obviously, life is hard for everybody, and maybe that's why people also dread going into silence, and maybe that's why we turn on the television so quickly once we enter into a room, for example, or sit behind the computer or whatever. Understandably, many work with computers, that's one thing, but I'm thinking for the time of leisure. But pertaining to the question of the meaning of life too, I mean, that's really something we really should be so occupied in living and finding out. Do you think that the lack of silence makes us lose the meaning of life? And that's why we dread silence even more, due to that lack of peace and of mind.
Yeah, I think that meaning of life is very difficult expression to me, because to me,
I'm thinking on a personal level, that you find your particular path and your sense of meaning of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
What
is meaningful?
How much is that connected to your silence?
Yes, it is completely connected, because when silence opens up within yourself, and you know yourself, you start to know your inner landscape better, you can automatically, as a consequence, you start to feel the difference between what is meaningful to you and what is not meaningful to you. And when you start to become more aware of that difference, this is meaningful. It gives me a sense of meaning, it gives me something, it gives me this feeling of meaningfulness. Then you know that sort of, you know where to walk, you know your directions, and you can easier say no to that which does not give you that sense of meaning or that meaningfulness. So it's a discernment that happens within yourself. It's not just like, I like this and I don't like that. It's not the same thing, because you go beyond like and dislike. And this is a fascinating thing with silence. When you start to deepen the silence within yourself, your perceptions starts to grow. You start to grow another, as the old doctor, there was an old doctor in the Renaissance called Paracelsus. He's said to be the father of holistic medicine, actually, from the Renaissance. And he said we have a sensory perception. We have 5 senses, the known 5 senses, that can pick up the world outside of us. And we have 5 inner senses that picks up the world within ourselves. So, which means that we have a capacity of perception that we have to explore, each and every one of us. And I'm sure that most people can sense those perceptions already. You know something. You have a sense when a person comes into a room. You have a perception. Or if you go somewhere and you have a perception. So we are filled with this capacity of perceptions. And when our awareness starts to grow, because we nurture ourselves with silence, these perceptions start to become stronger. And we start to navigate in our life, not so much with likes and dislikes, but with our own perceptions. It becomes like a navigating system. We can be captains on our ship, but we navigate from what is also called being, from our being and not from our doing. And we can see that before we navigated from doing all the time, from doing. And suddenly, with that perception evolving, we can actually navigate from being. We can let being decide our choices, our paths, where we want to go. And then our life becomes just different and much richer and much more spontaneous, because we are connected with the now, what is happening in the moment, in a completely different way than before.
This is so interesting to listen to you, really, and I'm thinking too, I'm born and raised in Africa and have lived on several continents, really, and observed as a cultural analyst for so many years too, the differences between the West and the East, or the West and the South. And it seems to me that we're so rich on material wealth here in the West, or at least used to be, maybe we can say today, when we look at the US and many places where poverty is growing very rapidly. But we used to be so rich on material wealth, yet we weren't that rich on inner values, since our culture has been through really this notion of materialism being the only tangible, everything has to be proven by tangible evidence, empirically really, and all of that. So, but once you go to the South America, Africa, other places, they speak much more like you do now. And they seem to be people that have so much to give, so much kindness, so much calmness. Many people are poor, yet they give so much. So
of something else.
Yeah, you remind me of Africans when you speak the way you do. So I seem to feel too that we have lost some of that, and we really should regain it.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. But we also need to be inspired to do that. And we need to be curious, and make some choices, and maybe also, look for somebody that really touches your soul, because there are so many. We are different. We are all different, and somebody touches us more than someone else. And so, we have an amazing opportunity of information in our age. And it's just amazing what we can look for and what we can do with our free time So it's a choice. Every moment is a choice. Do we want to watch that movie, or do we want to go to the internet and find something that really inspires our soul? You know, there's always this choice, or go out and make a real appointment in real life and don't have so much time spent in the virtual reality, you know.
So, Kristin Flood, in all the wisdom that you have on the subject of mindfulness and quietness and serenity and, you know, silence, really, and the need for silence, what was your greatest takeaway from learning about the life of Saint Francis of Assisi?
Wow. I fell in love with Saint Francis, and also with Saint Clare. She's the female counterpart, and both of them were really inspiring teachers to me, and still are. And the fascinating thing I found out, I read a lot of books, but I did also challenge myself by walking as a pilgrim in his footpaths, and I had a lot of tough episodes where I had to encounter myself. And what I discovered really genuinely by myself is that his life is made out of small anecdotes. And all children in Italy in school, they learn about some of these anecdotes. And each of these anecdotes of St. Francis's life are like metaphors. So if you read St. Francis's life, you discover that there's a step-by-step learning path that you can use yourself in your own inner search. And the fascinating thing with Saint Francis from Assisi is, of course, that he was so small. He was really so humble and small and simple, but became one of the biggest figures in Christianity. He is, maybe we can say, he's the number 2 after Jesus Christ in our Christian tradition, as an inspiration, as a teacher.
And thank you very much, Kristin Flood, for taking the time to speaking to us here at the Herland Report, and so we may learn from your wisdom and listen to your philosophy about silence.
Thank you, Hannah.